know you can do it. You can do it. Just one more big push. Come on, give it to me. One more big oof. Congratulations. It's a beautiful baby thing. The miracle of life. That's what it's all about for a doctor. The ability to give people the chance to live their lives to their fullest potential. Hi, I'm Dr. Quack Sawbones, public health representative at the World Health Organization. I started off my career as a surgeon in the small town I grew up in, Slaughterville, Oklahoma. But I craved something more out of my career, so I went over to Europe to join the European division of the World Health Organization because I wanted to help the world in a more global sense, and because I had numerous lawsuits to my name because of medical malpractice. I wanted to help combat the big picture public health concerns of the world. And the WHO lets me do that. After all, they were founded in the first place because of global public health issues. Founded in 1948, the World Health Organization, or the WHO, is an agency under the UN dedicated to addressing international public health. It was founded for the same reasons, particularly addressing diseases like malaria and tuberculosis that were becoming increasingly global problems. But why did the UN decide that the World Health Organization was a necessity in the first place? I mean, if there's a problem in my country, shouldn't my country have it under control? Shouldn't my country know what they're doing? Shouldn't my country be able to stop it because they have my best interests at heart? Well, in 1945, the entire world was coming off the coattails of two massive world wars and thought, hey, maybe we can't just isolate ourselves and our problems from the rest of the world. I mean, the First World War happened because two countries, just two, were having problems with each other, and the entire world decided to just dogpile on each other because of that. The Second World War being when three countries thought they could just casually commit war crimes and commit genocide on thousands of people so they could become the perfect, isolated, monocultural society without any problems. They were wrong. So the global community came together to form the UN as a way to prevent wars to that extreme from happening ever again, come together a more collective matter to prevent 40 million people dying over basically nothing because of miscommunication between countries, and to prevent war crimes from being committed in other countries. And that's definitely working out for us right now. And unsurprisingly, the globalization that caused the formation of the UN also caused a need for international public health. Sure, looking at the way technology increased over the years, you see that the likelihood for someone to die because of an infectious disease lowered. But looking at the actual global infection rates of the world, you see an increase as more and more people interact with each other on an international level, whether that be because of immigration, global businesses, or, war. Yeah, when there isn't a good international public health system in place and the entire world decides to get into this one condensed country to fight each other, that's basically paradise for any infectious disease, like influenza. After World War I, when a bunch of soldiers who were in god-awful conditions over in their battlefields came home in boats with equally awful conditions, and when a couple of those soldiers come home sick to their friends and families all over the Americas, Asia, and Europe, a pandemic starts, and not just a casual pandemic, if you could call the pandemic casual. It was a pandemic that would infect over a third of the world's population, over 500 million people. This pandemic, the Spanish flu, although technically it isn't even the Spanish flu since it likely originated in a country that actually fought in World War I, like Germany or France, but since Spain wasn't having a media blackout like the rest of the world, they were actually reporting their cases, so the rest of the world was just like, yeah, this is Spain's fault. Let's blame the entire pandemic on Spain, even though it is almost literally impossible for it to have started in Spain, since Spain remained neutral throughout the entire war, and it was originally spread by soldiers. This pandemic spread at such a massive scale in such a short amount of time because everyone was interacting with each other on an international level because of globalization. And that still happens to this day, even when we're not fighting in a massive world war because of things like air travel and global markets. Look at the SARS outbreak in the early 2000s. A man in China catches the disease week 15 of the pandemic, and because of that, less than 24 hours later, there are now cases in Hong Kong, Singapore, Vietnam, and Canada. However, large in part because of the WHO, the pandemic didn't become nearly as bad as it could have been. Because of a large coordinated attack on the disease, cases of the pandemic started leveling off only a couple of months after they started. The WHO is clearly able to take the effects that massive modern globalization has on the world and neutralize them to a certain extent. Look at the development of vaccines right now. January 7th, 2020 was when the first virus for SARS-CoV-2 was isolated. 3 months later, March 17th, the first human trials for that vaccine for that virus began. And by the end of the year, in December, vaccines were already being distributed to the public. Look at the development of vaccines before the World Health Organization was founded. The polio vaccine started development in the 1930s, and the first effective vaccine for it came out 5 years after the World Health Organization was founded in 1953. 1880 to 1914 for typhoid fever, 1912 to 1937 for yellow fever, and 1881 to 1937 for anthrax. Now, sure, that faster turnaround can be chalked up to the better medical research that's happened in the past several decades. However, there is definitely a connection between the foundation of the WHO and the increased unified public health that came with that. Look at the vaccines for MMR, measles, mumps, and rubella. Production for these diseases started in the 1960s, and the MMR vaccine came out in 1971. Now that's already a noticeably faster turnaround, but it's even faster when you look at the vaccines that were developed for those singular diseases. Rubella's vaccine came out in 1969, mumps in 1967, and measles in 1963. Even if you look at vaccines developments that started before the WHO was founded, like smallpox and polio, the production for those vaccines noticeably increased after 1948. And it's not just an increase in vaccine production either. We went from having a shortage of to an abundance of PPE in this pandemic in a matter of months. We can see a country like Yemen completely eradicate a disease like cholera despite not having a working sewage system or a funded public health care system. We can see a disease like smallpox, which killed over 5 million people in the first half of the 20th century, be completely eradicated. Well, at least until the anti-vax moms changed that. All of these accomplishments and more are because of the public health landscape we find ourselves in now because of the WHO. Globalization used to increase at a rate that we couldn't keep up with, leading to some of the worst public health tragedies of the world and some of the most deadly pandemics. Now, we as a global community can come together in a more unified way to neutralize the health effects that a world interacting with each other constantly has. And for people like me who work at the WHO, our work is never done. So this is where I, Dr. Quack Sawbones, leave you. Now, Mrs. Johnson, I know it's hard for you, but I'm telling you, you have to stop sneaking into random buildings and eating lead paint chips off the wall.